I remember the like backyard set that we were at that was meant to be Robert Englund's house. I remember the geese being there all penned up and being kind of freaked out. Like, how are we? Like, these geese seem pissed. How are we?
Right. I'm all grown up. SYKE! All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is an American actor who has been in at least one of your favorite sitcoms if you were a 90s or 2000s kid. He has starred alongside many a Hollywood legend, but I remember him most fondly as Gunther Wheeler from the Paper Brigade. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Kyle Howard. Hey, Kyle, how you doing, my man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, bro. I'm doing great. Actually, I was just rewatching Paper Brigade last night.
I was going to say, you're digging deep with that Gunther Wheeler reference.
Man, well, that was such an important movie for me growing up. I had taped it off a Disney Channel, and you know, it was one of those things that I would rewatch again and again and again. So it's really a pleasure to talk to you today, man.
Oh, dude, likewise. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you would do the old school, like you'd wait for it to come on Disney. You'd have the VHS in there ready to go.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I even used to do because I learned this trick from my pops. I used to do I'd have the remote ready, and when the commercials came on, I'd pause the recording. And then when Disney Channel was like, and now back to the movie, I'd unpause. So I would cut out the commercials.
You were a pro.
I was a pro, man. I was a pro. So cool, man. I want to take it back a little bit. You grew up in Colorado. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
And your first job was in a dinner theater when you were 13 years old. Is that when you started acting?
I think I started actually in a school play in 8th grade. And then the next year I did the dinner theater thing. But yeah, my very, very first taste was a play at school in my middle school. And I just freaking fell in love with it, man. I was like kind of a sports kid.
Yeah.
But I wasn't growing. I was like super late bloomer guy. So when I was 14, I was still like 4'6" probably.
Oh,
I
wow,
was
yeah.
teeny tiny. And I was trying to play basketball, and all the other kids were getting big. I was trying to play baseball. I remember all the pitchers were like, when you got into the 14 and over league, all the pitchers suddenly looked like full grown men. Like I swear some of them had facial hair already.
Oh, shit.
And they were just like throwing these fastballs, and I was terrified. So then I started thinking, okay, maybe I'm a track guy. So I started running track, but I was still so tiny. I was bad at track. Like I was trying to do hurdles. I was trying to do high jump, like all of the stuff that a tiny little person should not be doing.
Yeah.
And so I remember in 8th grade, I said to my mom, I'm going to try out for the play. And if I get in, I'm going to do it and see what happens. And if I don't, then I'll run track again. And she was like, all right, cool. I tried out and I got in, and that was it, dude. I was just
What play was it? Do you remember?
I don't know if it's something you would have heard of. I've never really heard of it again since I did it. It was a really sweet show, though. It was called Wanna Play, and it was an original musical written by middle school kids.
Oh, wow.
And it was all these different vignettes with all these different characters. So it was kind of like doing a sketch show. Like every kid in the play, we got to play like 5 or 6 different parts, and the different sketches would come and go, and you play a different character in each one. And then there were songs in between. And I was like kind of a terrible singer, but in 8th grade, like you don't really have to be good.
Sure.
at it.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. And then I met this girl, Heather Wheeler, in the play, and she had been doing it for a while. And I was like, this is awesome. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And she was like, hey, I go to this acting class, a TV and film like workshop study. Like it sounded very grown up, very professional. And it was in the next town over from us, which was like kind of the big city at 14.
Right.
And she was like, do you want to go with me? And I was like, yeah, I totally do. So I went to that, and that felt like that felt like I had made it to Hollywood.
Right. You were taken seriously, felt professional.
Yeah, every kid in there took it super seriously. We were like doing scene studies, and then our coach was like filming us, and he'd like cut together the videos and stuff.
Oh,
and so
shit.
It felt very grown up. And through that class, I ended up getting an agent in Denver, which was like an hour away from us, and started doing commercials and stuff in Denver. And then that was like a whole other thing that blew my mind. I was like, whoa, I've made it.
Yeah.
And then through doing that, I met a woman eventually who used to be a casting director in LA. She had moved to Colorado, and she was teaching kids and managing them. So I met her in Denver and I started taking classes with her. And she was the one that said, "Hey, I'm taking a group of kids to LA for pilot season and you got to come."
Oh,
And
wow,
so
man.
I was all in.
Dude, this is amazing, by the way, because you're answering like so many of the questions that I had just
Am
by
I
telling me.
sorry? I'm
You
like,
know, no, no,
I'm jumping
no.
ahead on all your stuff.
It's perfect, man. Keep it going.
So I met this woman. I was in Denver actually for an audition. There was like, I think there was a movie in town. In fact, I think I remember what movie it was. There's this old Andy Garcia movie called Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Uh huh.
And they were shooting in Denver and they were trying to hire some small roles out of Denver with local actors. So I went to the audition, didn't get the part, but the woman who was there casting it was this woman who ended up being my coach and being my manager. And she talked to me in the audition and she said, "Hey, you got to get to LA. I'm going to give you classes. I'm going to take a group of kids out there. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And then she was like, "Okay, where's your mom?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "She's in the car." And so I went and got my mom.
How old were you at that point?
I had just turned 16, but still I looked like I was like 12, man.
Right, right, right.
When I got my driver's license, I was 4'10" on my original Colorado driver's license. It said 4'10". So I was teeny tiny, looked really young, which I think is one of the things this woman that I met was psyched about.
Yeah, because you could
'Cause
play
I
younger
would-
for longer. Yeah.
Exactly. So she says, "Where's your mom?" I say, "She's in the car." She says, "Go get her." So I go out to the car and I'm like, "Mom, we're going to LA." And my mom is like, "What?"
Right.
"No, we're not, sir."
Let's pause there for a second. So,
Yeah.
so you made up your mind to, of course, immediately that you were going to LA. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would imagine that even before she presented this opportunity to you, you must have had it in your head after taking classes for a while that like eventually I'm going out to Hollywood, right?
Yeah, that was for sure the dream.
So did you, even before that point, or let's say from that point, like, did you ever discuss it with your parents and were they supportive or were they kind of like, I don't know how that sounds to me?
Before that point, I don't think I had discussed it with them. I think in my head, it kind of seemed like a thing that I would probably do when I finished high school. And
Right.
like, maybe I would try to get into a college in LA,
Yeah.
or maybe I would just come out and try my chances. I think that's kind of what I had in my mind.
Yeah.
But when I met this woman who was like, "You need to go and you need to go now,"
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay,
Time to do it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay. So your mom said, no, I read, and if this is true, this is fucking incredible, that you worked a paper route to earn money to go to LA. Is that correct?
It's mostly true." So I had already had a paper route prior to this. I got a paper route when I was 12.
Wow.
And I had it for 2 years, and I was like a little money saver kid.
Bro,
Both
so
my
the Paper Brigade was like method acting for you, man. You were channeling real life experience.
100%. When they hired me for that, and then I told them like, "Yo, I was actually a paper boy for 2 years," and then I got on the bike and started flinging papers for the scenes where I'm actually doing it.
Because you were already
like,
nice
"Oh my
with it.
God,
You
we
were
hit
like,
the jackpot."
flick it a wrist, flick it a wrist.
He shoots, he scores.
I had real life training.
That's incredible, man. Was there a number provided to you by this woman that was like, hey, this is kind of how much you're going to need to come out and make the trip?
Yeah, there was. I want to say, I mean, you got to remember, we're talking about 1995, I believe.
Right, right.
And the number at the time sounded really scary. I want to say it was like $3,500 or something.
That's scary now, dog.
Yeah, dude. And my mom had a full-time job.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of school. I believe I was in the middle of my sophomore year of high school. And, pilot season, which isn't totally a thing anymore, but at the time, pilot season was a very specific 2 months of the year.
Super regimented, yeah.
Yeah. So we had to be here for pilot season. So basically we got to LA like the 1st of February, which means I had to get out of school in the middle of the school year. my mom luckily had a really, really cool boss who's like a lifelong family friend at this point. And he was really supportive and he said, go for it. You've got a job when you come home. The plan was to come out for 2 months and see how it went. And then we'd come back and I'd go back to school and she'd go back to work. It ended up turning into like 4 or 5 months because I got a job and we had to stay. But we worked it all out. But yeah, we had to. Have you ever heard stories of the Oakwood Apartments in Burbank?
I'm very familiar. Almost.
I'm sure you are.
Like there's so many actors that I come across that's like a part of their journey, man. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the spot. You know, it's the perfect setup for kid actors that are coming from all over the country.
It is, yeah.
A furnished apartment, and it's furnished, man. It is like furnished down to the sheets and towels and dishes and forks. Like you don't have to bring a thing, but you pay for that.
Yeah.
I think it was like those apartments were maybe like $1,200 a month or something at the time, which again, like at the time that was crazy. I'm sure those apartments now are like $4,000.
Right. Yeah.
But we had to pay for the apartment, other living expenses when we're out here.
The woman who was the casting director that was kind of putting you on, was she also like a casting director turned agent, or was she putting you on to representation once you got out to LA?
She was casting director turned manager. So she was managing us and training, but she got all of us agents before we got to town.
Wow. That's pretty impressive, man.
It was, man. She knew what she was doing. And I mean, I'm sure for my parents, it was still very scary and felt like, is this a scam? Are we getting tricked into something? But it was very straightforward and very legitimate. And to come into town and already have an agent and already know that you're going to hit the ground and like be actually going on auditions was huge. You know, a lot of people come to town and spend the first however many months trying to get the agent.
I spent years just trying to get a manager when I got out there, bro. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I do think there's something about doing it when you're a kid, which like she was hip to. And that's why I remember her saying, like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it now. And she knew what she was talking about.
Yeah. Is the IMDb tidbit true that you saved up to buy a new car to come out to LA?
No, we took my mom's car, but I did use my paper route money that I had saved to pay for most of the trip. I had also had a couple little odd jobs. I worked in a video store for a while.
Tight.
I got that job at 14, I believe, which was awesome for me because I loved movies and I thought that was such a killer job, at least moving in the right direction of what I wanted to do.
Especially because also then you could probably rent them for free, right? Just take it home and watch
all
it.
the time. We could take movies home every night. It was amazing. And then the dinner theater where I had done a couple shows, I also bussed tables there when I wasn't in the show, and I made some money doing that. So I had saved money from those three things, and that paid for most of the trip, but it didn't cover all of it. So my parents were very supportive and they threw in some money too. And so to answer your question of like whether or not I had their blessing, I totally did. They were super supportive. It just took a while to convince my mom. You know, that day that I met this casting director that was like, you got to get to LA. My mom was like, absolutely not.
Right.
And I worked on her for 6 months.
Wow.
And finally I wore her down and she said, all right, if you want it that bad, then we'll figure it out and we'll make it happen. And we did it.
That's understandable on your mom's part because, I mean, even at that time, there's so many sharks in Hollywood that'll just prey upon people's hopes and dreams. And it's kind of gotten even worse now. At least now the existence of the internet makes it easier for people to be savvy about it. But yeah, they're out there. So it's dope that you got hooked up with a legitimate casting director / manager and got out there. Yeah. You get to LA and your film debut was House Arrest in 1996 alongside Jamie Lee Curtis and Jennifer Love Hewitt, a young Jennifer Love Hewitt. That's incredible, man. Was that the first thing that you auditioned for? Was it the first thing that you filmed, or was it just the first thing that released? What was the process of getting the audition and going through all that stuff?
It was wild, man. It was not the first thing that I auditioned for. I had been in LA for at least a few weeks at that point. When I first came out, I was auditioning for commercials and pilots, and then occasional movies.
Okay.
And I had gone on this audition for House Arrest one time, and then I actually booked a commercial that I was really excited about.
Was it the Coke commercial?
It was. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Anything but Coca-Cola and we melt.
I love it. Give me that Coca-Cola.
Yeah, dude. And at the time, that like Talking Ice Cubes campaign that they did was like so high tech. That was like
Right.
crazy special effects, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being really excited. That was like, I had done little commercials in Denver and stuff, but to do a big national commercial
Dude,
that had a
Coca-Cola,
budget, and
that's a
it
household
was,
brand. Yeah.
yeah, it felt really big time. And so I remember shooting the commercial. I think we shot it for 2 days. And while I was on the commercial, my manager from Colorado had called my mom. I think she asked her to put me on the phone, and she told me that I got house arrest. I had
Oh,
auditioned
wow.
for it in like the prior weeks, and
Right.
it was a gnarly audition process. I went back 3 or 4 different times, I think, but I found out on the set of the commercial that was what was next, and I was just, beside myself. I couldn't
Dude,
believe it.
I can't imagine that feeling, man, especially being still pretty fresh and having that level of
Oh,
success
so fresh.
so quickly. And at that point when you auditioned and at least when you got the role, did you know that you would be starring with Jamie Lee Curtis?
I did. I think I didn't know about the rest of the cast, but I'm pretty sure Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Pollak were set.
Right.
I think they were still working on the rest of the adults, and then they were still working on the rest of the kids too, including the girlfriend,
Yep.
who I was thrilled to find out I got to sit in on auditions on
Yeah,
their
yeah.
final auditions
Yeah.
for. So I actually remember being in the room the day I think they brought in either 3 or 4 of their last picks, their kind of top finalists. Jennifer Love Hewitt was one of them. I'd read with each of the girls. They were all great. I just remember us having like a special chemistry during our audition scenes.
Yeah.
And it felt like something different than with the other girls. But I didn't know if this was like my first time doing a movie. I didn't know if I was supposed to speak up or
Right.
I was just there to, read off camera lines for her. So I was just kind of keeping my mouth shut. And I remember sitting in the room with the producer and the director. And when the last girl left, they said, "All right, Kyle, what do you think?" And I was like,
wow.
"What? You want me to pick?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, no, but we're just curious.
Value your opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, what did you feel? We felt that you had more chemistry with one person over the others, but what do you think?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, that girl Jennifer, I felt like she was a really good actress, and it went really well." And they were like, "All right, cool." And I remember them kind of not letting me know who their favorite was.
Yeah.
But then a couple days later, I found out we all had the same favorite, and she got the part. And
Wow.
You owe me a quarter.
Dude, that's a really cool first experience, because not only to be cast in a movie with such big names attached to it, but to have your opinion valued and included in the process. That's so dope, man.
totally, yeah, it was unreal, and it was also brand new to me. That I think I appreciated that, but probably not even as fully as I could later on. Because I was sort of thinking like, is this just how it always is? And
Right, because if that's your first experience, it seems like that's the standard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That was a sign of things to come with that movie too. It was just like from the very first day, even from my audition process, which, can be a really brutal thing.
Yeah.
I just remember everybody being so lovely. And every day filming that movie, it was just like the best first experience you could ask for, coming into this business as a total newbie and just being surrounded by like really, really generous actors. And the director is this amazing guy called Harry Weiner. And Jamie Lee Curtis was amazing with all of us. She was like a big star to all of us kids.
Dude, yeah.
Like,
I was about to say, like you mentioned beforehand that you were a movie buff, you worked in a video store, like you had to have been a fan and, been familiar with the Halloween franchise, of course. Like she was like, and the year before House Arrest, True Lies came
True
out.
Lies, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my God, bro. She
was like the biggest thing going there.
Dude, I'm telling you. Do you have a favorite on-set memory with Jamie that you'd like to share?
From day one, she was just she just made me and everyone else there, because a lot of the other kids were kind of new to the business too. She just made us all feel so comfortable.
Yeah.
which is huge. I mean, obviously, for an actor, like that's the best gift you can give someone else you're working with, is to just create a comfortable space where everybody feels safe to do their thing and to be creative.
Absolutely, man.
And she just did that from the very beginning. And I remember her going out of her way to, we were going to be playing mother and son. And I remember before she even started, they called me and said, Jamie wants to take you to breakfast just to hang out and get to know each other. You know? And so I was like, okay, cool. And I remember her inviting me to breakfast at this like fancy hotel in Beverly Hills. And my mom had to drop me off, of course. And my mom's good friend was in town visiting at the time. So she was along with us. And I remember pulling up like at the valet in front of this, I don't remember what hotel it was. It's just like this super fancy Beverly Hills hotel. I'm going to have breakfast with Jamie Lee Curtis. And my mom's friend like has her camera out and she's like, she's ready to get pictures for when we see Jamie. And we pull up and Jamie's like already out there waiting. And, she just like made it like this hilarious thing. Like my mom is there with her best friend, and her best friend is clicking away. And like it could have been incredibly awkward and she could have made us feel weird about that whole situation, but didn't do any of it. She just hammed it up and she went out of her way to like peek in the car and say hi to them.
Dude, that's so dope.
Just really sweet. Yeah.
Do you still have those pics?
That's a good question. I should ask my mom. I certainly don't have them, but I bet that my mom or her friend has them somewhere.
Those days you had to take them to develop the shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When we get off this call, I'm going to ask my mom that. That would be epic.
Okay. Yo, if you do find it, take a pic and send it to me, man. I would love to see it.
Okay. I'll ask her if she has them.
Okay, sick, man.
Amazing. The work experience itself was incredible too, but I also just remember all the downtime on set and just the experience as a whole. I mean, it was the dream for me. And I remember when it ended, I was so sad. And I just was positive that I could never have an experience as special as that again.
Right.
I feel like, as I've gone on in my career, I've been very, very, very lucky to repeatedly have really nice experiences.
Yeah.
But that one was just like, it was the dream, man. It was amazing.
That's what's up, man.
What regiment you with?
The Paper Brigade.
Let's move on to my favorite Kyle Howard film, The Paper Brigade. That comes next in the chronology there. It's kind of crazy. Like very early on, you're starring with these horror legends. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis and now Robert Englund. Like you had, Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, like back to back.
I don't know why that was my theme, man.
Right. Yeah. It's honestly like you were meant to be a big horror star. It probably is around the corner.
So.
Yeah.
And I never did a horror project until like 3 years ago.
Wow. Look at that.
I did this thing right before COVID. And it was, at the time, I remember thinking like, how have I never done a horror movie before?
Right. Yeah, man. Yeah. So walk me through how the Paper Brigade came about. Was it a simple audition process? Give me the background leading up to the Paper Brigade.
It actually was just, I want to say a few months after we had finished House Arrest. House Arrest had not come out or anything yet. It didn't come out until the following summer. I remember it took a really long time to come out. So I finished House Arrest and just, went back to auditioning. And this was just another audition that I went to. And it was a great script. I remember from the beginning thinking like, this is hilarious. This is so much fun. I'm a real paper boy. Like, how could I not be right for this?
Yeah.
And it was a smaller movie. House Arrest actually was a gigantic bomb theatrically. It did well later on video and Disney Channel and all of that. But at the time that it was actually released, it was a massive bomb. But it was a big studio movie. It had a big budget.
Big budget. Over here, we're dealing with the Disney Channel premiere film.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, which was one of the last ones. It was the predecessor to the Disney Channel original movie.
Is that right? I don't even know that.
Yeah, dude, you did the Paper Brigade and one more movie were the last in 1997, the last Disney Channel premiere films, and then they moved on to calling it Disney Channel original movie, and it was like a whole little rebrand.
No way, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Paper Brigade, like just in comparison to house arrest. It had a much smaller budget. It was it was just a smaller operation. And so the audition process was still a bit grueling. I had to go back a few times, but it wasn't quite as intimidating as going in over and over and, sitting in a room with all these studio heads and just so much pressure. It was a little bit more humane than that. I guess I had already sort of been through it. So
yeah,
didn't feel quite as intimidating to me, but I was thrilled to get that job. We filmed it in Salt Lake City, which was amazing.
I was wondering if you guys filmed it in Pleasant Valley, because I was like, it doesn't necessarily, as even the opening shots in NYC doesn't particularly look like NYC, so I was curious.
Sure. No, we shot the entire thing in Salt Lake. At the time, there was a lot of production going on in Utah. I think they had some tax incentives and stuff.
Right.
And there was this little independent company based there called Lucadia Films that made Paper Brigade. And I actually ended up doing 2 movies for them back to back. I did Paper Brigade, and then I did this other much lesser known movie called Address Unknown a few months later.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did the whole thing in Salt Lake, and that one, again, it was like this incredible cast of me and a bunch of other kids my age. So we just had the time of our lives. Again, it was just another kind of idyllic dream-like experience where I was like, what, dude? I really get to do this? I wasn't even done with high school yet. And I found my thing, and I was like, I'm going to do this forever. And I'm so lucky to have made it to LA when I did. And
at that point, were you doing a hybrid homeschool / on-set teacher type of deal?
Yeah, I did the whole on-set teacher thing, which looking back on, I think was I loved it at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it in the sense that I loved it more than being at my regular high school, which I really love at all. I still would have preferred to just be on set all day and forget about the school part. But compared to being back stuck in my junior year of high school, I think it would have been at that time, I was thrilled to be off on a movie set instead.
Wow, man. Yeah. Did you keep in touch with your high school homies on AIM and stuff like that?
Gosh, dude, was AIM even a thing then? Maybe it was.
It was. Yeah. Early days, but yeah.
I did keep in touch with my close friends. A couple of them even came out to visit me in LA a couple of times when my best friend from high school came out when we were shooting House Arrest. And I remember that was really special. So yeah, I did keep in touch with my closest friends there. Other than missing my friends, I was just thrilled to be off doing my thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, man. It's such an amazing experience, especially at that age and kind of back to back to back.
Yeah, I was lucky, man. And I think it was a different time then. And, there was just a lot of really great kids material at that time.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
It was a good time to be starting out in Hollywood.
Big facts, man. Do you still keep in touch with any of your Paper Brigade co-stars?
Not really, actually. It's funny. I still keep in touch with some buddies from House Arrest. I've lost touch with pretty much everybody on Paper Brigade. Occasionally, I'll touch base with Chauncey Leopardi.
Hell yeah.
He was in the Sandlot.
Of Sandlot fame, yeah.
Yep. So we talk occasionally, but everybody else I've kind of lost track of, man. It's tough to keep in touch over all of these years now. I guess it's probably been 25 years.
It is, man. It would be really cool to do a sequel to it. I don't know if you would ever be open to that if someone brought it to you.
Oh my God, I'd be thrilled.
Dude, I think it would be, I mean, maybe Gunther's running the paper now, or maybe papers don't exist anymore, but because now I don't think paper boys are a thing anymor, are they?
Dude, I've wondered that recently. I don't know if there's still some small town America places that have a local paper that the kids go around and deliver, but I don't know if that's a thing.
It's kind of like a magical gem of our era that I think has disappeared now, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that movie, it's such a low-key hit. First of all, I don't know why there's nowhere that's streaming it, especially Disney Plus. I'm sure obviously it's tangled up in some sort of a rights situation that I'm not familiar with. But whatever it is, I still feel like Disney Plus should have it on there. But regardless, you can find it on YouTube and other such places that are, have just ripped it off TV and uploaded it. Whenever you find those, right, if you you look at it at YouTube, each person that's uploaded on YouTube has got at least a couple 100,000 views on there and mad comments with people being like, yo, like I remember this movie. I can't believe, I forgot about this until now. And like this had a deep place in my memory. And there's just so many of us like in the millennial generation that feel that way about it. I mean, me personally, I do a lot of content reflecting on nostalgia and stuff. And whenever I bring up the Paper Brigade, I do get this response that people are like, oh shit, like, yeah, I do remember that movie. Like, and everybody kind of remembers it really, really fondly. I think it would be dope, man. Maybe this podcast right now is starting up the seed. I'll get to writing a treatment.
This is going to launch it.
I get to writing a treatment when we're done. Yo, okay.
Maybe Gunther has a kid now and the kid is getting into the paper route business.
Facts.
I don't know. We're
spitballing. Okay. We'll put a pin in this. I think this could happen, man. And listen, Robert Englund is still around. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we get us popping.
Get that guy back. Oh my God. Get the team back together, dude.
Yeah, man.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
The scene that I want to ask about the most is with the geese, man. Did you guys actually do that like stunt with the geese?
I remember that day. I'm trying to remember how they got them to chase us. I don't remember specifically. I do vaguely remember. I remember the like backyard set that we were at that was meant to be Robert Englund's house. I remember the geese being there all penned up and being kind of freaked out. Like, how are we? Like, these geese seem pissed. How are we?
Right.
But I don't actually specifically remember the stunt itself. I'm sure it was totally safe.
Yeah.
And in fact, I haven't seen that movie in several years now. I should go back and look at that scene again. Maybe it would jog my memory.
I'll run you a link to the best copy.
Okay, please do. Yeah, that'd be amazing. I mean, the whole thing was so fun. The days I remember the most, which were like weirdly the hardest days on the movie, but also the most memorable, were like all the really physical stuff. That whole like where I get like geared up and like ready for battle.
Yeah.
I have like all the like catcher's gear on, and I think I have a trash can lid.
You do, yeah. And you cut up like a car mat. Yeah.
Yes, totally. I remember being in that stuff for days and shooting in this neighborhood that we were in.
Oh, shit.
One of the little kids was like in the treehouse, like throwing tomatoes at me or something. And it was just all of this like heavy physical stuff that was pretty hard work. Also, I remember it being like 1,000 degrees in Salt Lake in the summertime. We were shooting this movie July and August in Salt Lake. Yeah. And it was brutally hot. And those days, I mean, I would just be drenched in sweat and just so exhausted at the end of the day. But I felt like I was in it, man. I felt like I was just in the trenches and like doing my craft and making something special. And you know,
you were making something special.
Oh, that's nice to hear, dude.
Unless there was a really good stunt double, you did an incredible amount of falling off your bike, bro. Like a lot of it. I was like, damn, this dude, they had this dude, like, I mean, what was the instruction? Like, make sure you bust ass like 4 times in a row when they start throwing tomatoes at you.
I wonder, dude, again, that's one of those things that is like so foggy to me. Are you thinking of specific times where like you can tell that it's me?
I'm pretty sure I could tell that it's you. Yeah. Cause it's like, you're looking, like there's one shot, you're looking at the kids like, yo, what the fuck? Why are you throwing tomatoes at me? And then you start trying to get away. You ride your bike into a tree, fall off of it. Then the dog comes and you fall off again. Yeah.
It's funny. I remember being that age and thinking like, again, I was like so committed to my craft. And I was like, I took it so seriously and it was such an art form to me. And I remember always wanting to, you'd hear stories about older actors. You'd hear stories about Tom Cruise and Harrison Ford and like always doing their own stunts. And I was like, I want to be that guy. Like, hell yeah, I want to do it. And I remember, I mean, of course, as a kid, like people are not just going to go and let you do like whatever stunt you want to do. And I remember a few times on the next movie I did for those same people, I remember there being a stunt where my character was in the back of a pickup truck and he has to crawl around. The pickup truck is on the road moving. He has to crawl around inside the window.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm going to do that. I got to partially do it. They did all the close-up stuff and shooting from inside the car on a trailer, like the like the truck was on a trailer that was then being pulled down the highway. And so on that, I was allowed to actually climb around and in the window, because if I were to fall, I would just fall onto the trailer and not fall into the road. And I remember they wanted to get a shot from the side of the road of the truck going by as my character is making the move around. And I was like, I can do it, guys. I can do it.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you're 16 years old. It's a liability, bro. The insurance is going to skyrocket. There's just no way.
Yeah. And if I don't make it, like, their movie is finished.
They're fucked. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember always wanting to like do as much of that stuff as I could. Again, I just thought that was like, that meant like you were really taking it seriously and you were really
big facts, man.
Player.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what it was like interacting with Robert Englund on set, man?
Oh, I remember him being so much fun. Again, kind of that same experience I had with Jamie Lee Curtis, just like this guy that everybody knew and had this massive career at that point, coming on to this relatively small movie with a bunch of kids that like are pretty new.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people, I think, in that position could be a little gruff or a little bitter about having to be there with all these newbies. And it just was not that at all. I remember him being wonderful and funny and just joking around with all of us and keeping it light and being happy to be there and being a team player. And like I said, I think I've been really lucky. I had a couple great experiences to start things off. House Arrest and Paper Brigade are perfect examples of just wonderfully positive experiences. That theme has kind of just continued through the rest of my career. I mean, I could probably count on one hand the amount of like really bummer interactions that I've had on a set. And for the most part, it's just been working with people like that who are happy to be there and who love what they do for a living and who are, you know, wanting to make it a comfortable environment for the people that they're working with, whether they're brand new to the business or not. And yeah, Robert was just exactly that, which was awesome for all of us little kids who were like, dude, that's Freddy Krueger.
That's what's up, man. That's really nice to hear.
I think about it a lot being older now. And like I did a Disney thing right before COVID, actually.
Yes.
With a bunch of like 12, 13-year-old kids. And it was kind of like a role reversal for me.
Upside down magic.
Yeah, exactly.
You were talking about Address Unknown, which I believe was Sean Levy's feature film directorial debut. And
indeed it was.
He would go on to be fucking Sean Levy, a prolific director, producer, writer, like all the above. And you were in his feature film directorial debut. I mean, that's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, you just gave us a pretty dope anecdote from that film. Tell us what it was like working with Sean, man, and being on that movie.
Oh, man. Once again, just like a dream job for a kid to have. I mean, it was his first thing, but it makes so much sense that he's gone on to have the career that he has, because it was his first job, but it was like he had been doing it for 20 years. Like he was just so sharp and he knew his stuff and he was confident and he was beloved by the crew and we loved him as a cast. And I mean, he just could not have been better. I remember thinking, it's funny when you're a kid, you get so attached to these people that you work with for a few months. And I remember when I finished House Arrest, I loved our director so much, this guy, Harry Weiner. And I just said to myself, that was an amazing experience. I can't wait to have more experiences like this. But I know for a fact I will never have a director again that I love as much as I love Harry. Then I went and did Paper Brigade, and this wonderful guy named Blair True directed that. And I remember thinking at the beginning of the movie, like, this guy seems all right, but he's no Harry. And then partway through it, man, I was like, Blair's amazing.
Yeah.
Blair might be my favorite director. And then we finished that, and then Address Unknown was the next movie. Same thing. I was like, no one can ever top Blair and Harry. And then Sean came along and I was like, dude, this guy's pretty epic. And we just became such buddies. He was just somehow so ahead of his own game. Like, he was really young at the time, and I think fresh out of film school, and he just knew his stuff, man. And it was just one of those things where you're like, wow, this person found the thing they're supposed to do in life. And he was so good at it, and so much fun along the way. He took it seriously, of course, but he never took it so seriously that it wasn't any fun. And we were like, this movie that we were shooting was a little more serious. It was supposed to be this kind of thrillery drama thing. It was not the same vein as Paper Brigade or even House Arrest. It was not really as much comedy at all. But I remember Sean just being hilarious. I actually remember he loved to do this thing. I wonder if he still does it, where they would get the camera rolling and then sound would call their speeding. And then Sean would say, and, like he was about to say action. And then he would pause and he would go, action. And he would do it like before, like a dramatic heavy scene. And I remember breaking so many times with it. And he would just do stuff like that all the time. He just made it so much fun. Again, it was a movie full of like mostly kids, me and this dude Corbin, who was actually from Salt Lake, and then this other guy Patrick Renna, who's another Sandlot alum.
Yep.
We were the three musketeers running around and trying to track down this like missing rare stamp. Again, I like hardly even remember the plot of the thing, but we had so much fun.
Throughout the 90s and 2000s, you would carry on to guest star in every dope sitcom ever. I don't know if anybody has the resume that you have in terms of like being a part of like all of those projects, including Home Improvement. You were in a Home Improvement episode with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. You were playing a dude named Greg who like he didn't want to hang out with, he didn't want to go on a double date with.
I think we were going bowling, right?
You guys were going bowling, yeah. And him and his girl weren't really feeling you and your girl, and then his mom made up a lie that she would come along as well so that you guys would not really want to go.
That's right. You know your stuff, dude.
Yeah, man, yeah, you know.
Anthony and I can't wait to go bowling with you guys. I have a 180 average, you know.
Oh, Greg, you're so showy.
I'm not showy. She always brings us up in front of other couples.
I do not.
Please, last Thursday night at the movies with Dan and Irene, what was that, huh?
Oh, you know what, Greg? Don't start with me, okay?
I'm not starting, you started with me.
This is a night.
What I couldn't help but think, man, is that like in that era, you had to be at least once or twice auditioning against JTT for roles, man, because you guys were kind of like a very similar archetype,
sure,
you know, teen stars. So is that true?
Dude, it must have been. I'm trying to think back. I don't know of any specific roles. You know, he did a movie, I think maybe the same year as House Arrest. It was called The Indian in the Cupboard, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if JTT was in that one.
Was it not?
But
maybe it was. Did he do one about camp?
Yeah, that sounds a little bit more familiar.
Like a summer camp movie?
Yeah.
There was something like that I remember was just before I had come out to LA. So it was something that I had not auditioned for. You know, I wonder if he maybe read for House Arrest. I remember in the audition process for House Arrest being up against a couple other kids that I was intimidated by and thinking like, ooh, like I've seen this guy on TV before, or like this guy's in a bunch of movies. Like I don't stand a chance against him. I don't know if Jonathan Taylor Thomas was part of that particular crew in that project, but I'm sure at some point we were auditioning for the same stuff. We were a similar age and a similar type.
Similar type. At multiple times, you guys shared like an almost identical hairstyle.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
We rocked that bowl cut. Dude.
That quintessential '90s cut. I don't be seeing that anymore. Somebody's got to bring it back.
I'm thinking about bringing it back, dude.
Well, you might have to for the Paper Brigade sequel, dog.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
we got to have Papa Gunther and Gunther Jr. both with like matching
just like Gunther and it was so funny that Andrew in that movie, your little brother, was legitimately mini me. Like he looked exactly like you, but just smaller. Yeah,
fully.
Being a teen star in the '90s, and you know, coming off of the type of projects that you were doing, I mean, just give me a little description of like, what was like the zeitgeist for you in Hollywood, man? I mean, your day-to-day life, what sort of exciting things were you doing? Were you going out there? Were you at parties? Were you rubbing shoulders with people? I mean, what was it like for you?
Yeah, it's funny, man. I feel like I would say I dabbled, not to like make myself sound good to my parents or anything, but I was a pretty good kid. I was like raised well, and I was raised outside of LA, and I was raised outside of this crazy business. Luckily, by the time I got to LA and started working and stuff, I kind of already knew what real life was, and
Sure.
that I was very lucky to be having these experiences and to be getting to do these jobs. But I think I knew enough to know that Hollywood is not real life, and
Sure.
and enough to know that, like, you got to be a little bit careful. I mean, I certainly had fun with my buddies, and we went out, and we went to some of the like really sceney Hollywoody parties, but I do not have any of those like kind of true Hollywood story kind of tales.
I can sense that, yeah, you had a good head on your shoulders.
And I feel lucky for that. I mean, I think probably at the time there's maybe even a little bit of a thing of like, ooh, like maybe a little jealous that I wasn't doing like the kind of like riskier, like more taboo, like cool guy stuff. But I just had this kind of like wholesome thing about me, and that just was not my nature. And I think was incredibly lucky to, when I first came to town and first started working, I just made incredible friends. Like Patrick, who I was just talking about from Address Unknown, he and I on that movie became buddies. And then when I was in LA full time the next year, he was like my number one. I still didn't know a lot of people in LA, and he was already living out here. And so he was like my number one guy to hit up and be like, hey, when are we hanging out?
Yeah.
And he's just like a wonderful, wonderful dude. He was best friends with this guy, Brahman, who is also my lifelong friend to this day. I met him through Pat when we were 18, I think.
Yeah.
And the three of us together for most of that, like those young Hollywood years, we were kind of the three musketeers running around together. And like I said, we were going to the stuff, and like, we were having some drinks and stuff, but we were like not the guys like at the after party, like where chaos was.
Yeah. For the best, man. For the best.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to disappoint. I wish I had better stories for you.
Not at all, man. I prefer that answer. I prefer that. You and I mean, have that in common. Not that I was a teen star in the same way that you were, because I wasn't at all. But I mean,
you have that like wholesome vibe about you.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. I mean, I don't drink. For me, going to a party is not like you have to drag me, because it's not my scene. So,
sure.
I'm very much into like, I'm regimented. I like to wake up early, go to the gym, go to karate, like do my thing. And I've always been that way. So yeah, I'm similar to you in that, like, you don't usually
I get a
catch
wholesome vibe from you. I watched a few episodes of the podcast and checked out your Instagram and stuff. And I was like, oh, this guy is, we got some stuff in common.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thanks, man. Drew Carey Show. What I like about you: 8 Simple Rules, Friends. I mean, the list of legendary sitcoms that you have been on is incredible. I could talk to you about that for hours. Out of all those experiences that you've had, do any in particular stand out to you? And if so, which ones?
Dude, I think Friends really does.
I know I didn't do well on my midterms and stuff, but I was kind of hoping you could change my grade.
And why exactly would I do that?
Because I'm in love with you.
I mean, that show was so iconic. I was a big fan of it,
Yeah.
but no one was a fan of it like my sister. My older sister was in college at the time, and she and all of her friends had, there was no like DVR in those days. They had a weekly like set thing where all their college friends would come to their house and they'd watch Friends. I believe it was Thursday nights, wasn't it?
I think you're right. Yeah.
I remember my mom got in trouble one night because she had the nerve to call my sister's house
During Friends.
And my sister picked up the phone and she was like, "Mom, what are you doing? My mom was like, what? What do you mean? She's like,
Yeah.
do you know what night it is? Do you know what time it is? My mom was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So my sister took her friend's viewing very, very seriously. And I remember going to that audition, coming home and feeling like, I think that went pretty well, but I didn't know. And a lot of times when you have an audition that you feel good about, you go home and you think about it and you're like, oh man, that one felt good. This one would be really, do I like that character? I hope I get it. I hope I get it. And I had a bit of that same feeling on that, but I remember more so feeling like, oh my God, my sister will be so psyched if I get that job. Like I really wanted it for her. I remember when they called and told me I got it, and I told her, and she was just like, what? You did not get a job on that show. I think I even had a thought at the time of like, it'd be rad to get her out here for tape night.
That would have been.
But Friends was going through a bit of a moment at that time. It was actually the year that Matthew Perry was not there very much. He was going through some of his substance abuse stuff.
Sure.
And he was, I think, taking breaks to do some rehab and stuff. And so it was a bit of a tumultuous time for them trying to shoot the show. And so they did a bunch of episodes without an audience. It was not quite like your I don't know how much your viewers know about like the typical
sitcom setup,
school multi-camera show like that, but usually you rehearse all week and then on Friday night you shoot it like a play and you have a live audience.
You got the audience, yeah.
So we didn't get to do that, but it was still just like a really magical experience for me. That was kind of like a whole other thing that I was discovering that I loved. I think when you mentioned Home Improvement, I'm pretty sure that was my first taste of the multi-camera sitcom live audience. Wow. And I really liked it. It reminded me of doing plays as a kid. And I loved that instant live feedback from the audience and just the energy about it. And fact that, you could like add a little joke or do a little thing in the moment that was spontaneous and that audience didn't know was coming and get a really like true reaction out of them. I just love that whole concept. Then I did Friends, and I believe that was before I went on and did Drew Carey, because Friends I just did an episode of, and then I went on and did many episodes of Drew Carey and really discovered that like that was my medium.
That's your jam.
Yeah, because they did do a very traditional tape night every week, and I just loved it. Even though we didn't get that on the week that I worked on Friends, it was still just a very magical experience. Again, to the point I made earlier, I remember all of them, and specifically Jennifer Aniston, so incredibly welcoming and approachable, and just making me so comfortable. I mean, we're talking about a show that was like in the height of its success. I mean, those guys were like the biggest stars on the planet at that moment.
Of course, yeah.
Aniston was like, I'm pretty sure she was married to Brad Pitt at the time. They were like, getting chased around by photographers all the time. That whole cast had every reason to be very closed off and very protective. And they just, I remember it so clearly. I remember the first day going for the table read, and I showed up at the stage, and I was told that I was going to meet at the stage and then wait for a van, and the van was going to come take us to the table read. And so I did that, and I figured it would, just be me, or maybe me and like the other people that were guest starring on that episode. I get to the stage, and before the van shows up, all the Friends cast starts showing up too. And they're just like kind of milling around. And the first person that said anything to me was Jennifer Aniston. She said, "Hey, I'm Jen. Who are you?"
Wow.
And I was like, I'm Kyle. And then the van pulled up. They all started getting in. And I remember thinking like, this must be like the van for them. And I'm waiting for a different van. And again, I remember her saying, "You're going to the table read, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Get in, come on." And it was just like, again, the kind of a thing that it's hard to explain to somebody outside of the business how intimidating and how nerve-wracking that can feel.
Oh, yeah.
Of just a person like that is just like instantly making you feel comfortable. And then it only lets you then be open to have like a really free creative experience and like do really good work when like no one's going to do their best work when they're just like terrified and intimidated and scared of the people that they're working with.
Dude, that's incredible, man. And I understand exactly what you mean, because I've been fortunate enough to meet so many of my heroes at this point as well. You know, the statement that people make, like never meet your heroes, like that's really not true across the board. Like sometimes you do, or a lot of times you meet people that you're like, okay, I'm assuming that you probably want nothing to do with me, and you know, you probably would have every right to feel that way. But and when people are just so warm to you, the day I landed in Los Angeles, I'm fresh from New York, I'm just trying to like figure it out. That same day I met Jean-Claude Van Damme, and like I grew up a big,
just randomly, like
kind of. So like what happened, you know the Grove, right?
Yeah, of course.
So back in those days, they used to film Extra with Mario Lopez at the Grove.
I remember that.
So when I got here to LA, I was just like knocking around. Like I didn't know anything about Los Angeles. I was
How old were you?
Like 21.
Okay.
And so I literally I hopped on a bus and I was just asking locals on the bus, like, yo, what's cool like to do around here? Like, what should I check out? And someone was like, yo, in like 2 stops, it's going to be the Grove. Like, it's a cool mall. Like people hang out there. You know, cool spots to eat. You check it out. And it's like in a cool spot in LA. So I was like, cool, I'll check out the Grove. So I walked into it, and I think that was my first time experiencing like an outdoor mall, because in New York, I didn't really grow up with that. And I was like, oh, this is tight. And I see this sign that's like Extra with Mario Lopez filming, like guest today, Kevin Jonas, followed by Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I was like, yo, like here? And so there's a film crew there. And I asked this dude, I was like, yo, are they, like Van Damme's going to be here? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, all right, bet. Like, and it was like in 3 hours. And I was like, I'm going to stand in this spot, and I'm just waiting here. So I'm waiting, and then, you know, a crowd is building up, and eventually like Mario Lopez and everybody comes, and they're kind of setting up. One of the PAs is asking like, yo, would anybody be down to ask, like, it was to promote Expendables 2. It was 2012. And they were like, would anybody be down to ask Jean-Claude Van Damme a question? I was like, yo, fuck yeah. Like hit me up. I was like, whatever you want me to ask, I'll ask. They gave me a kind of a dumb question, but I didn't really care. I was just going to be able to talk to Jean-Claude Van Damme. And so he did.
So they gave you like a scripted question to ask.
They gave me a scripted question. Actually, I'm gonna be real with you. So first they were like, "What do you want to ask?" And I had a good question. It was about kickboxer, and then they took that question and used it in their interview.
No way.
Yeah. And then
So
they were like,
you wrote their interview question.
I wrote the interview. And then they're probably like, oh, it's a good fucking question. And then they were like, all right, we're going to pull you up in a second. Like, ask him this. I was like, okay. And so
you're like, my questions are better than yours.
Yeah, deadass. Yeah. So, but yeah, he did his interview, then they pulled me up, asked him the question, and I recall, in fact, there's a hilarious clip on the Extra YouTube channel of this still, but
I gotta look at it up.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So when he starts talking to me, bro, he's talking to me, but like he kind of just grabbed my wrist, like he's like, yeah, bro, like, you know, and it was, I don't even, like, that's not even a thing that people do when this is what he did. And I was, but just to sort of be like, oh yeah, like putting your arm around somebody's shoulder when you're talking to them, kind of thing. And right. I was so elated. I was like, holy shit, I just landed in Los Angeles, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is just like talking to me right now. You know what I mean? Like, holy shit. And I mean, you can see my expression be like, you know, because there's very few people that I would be like, whoa, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was one of them. And I was like, whoa, right, immediately me. And so, yeah, he took like a while to kind of like, you know, talk out this answer.
Was he just holding your wrist the whole time?
The whole time.
Please send me this, dude.
Yeah,
I gotta see it.
And then when he was done, we shook hands, and I got out, and I was like, man, like the fact that not only did I meet him, but like he was just so warm was like amazing. So yeah, I say that to say, you know, not to tell all my stuff, but I relate to what you're saying for sure.
Well, dude, didn't you, I'm trying to remember it now. I saw your episode, or I listened to your episode with Phil Rosenthal.
Yeah, man.
Didn't you guys have, I'm trying to remember now how you guys connected, but I feel like that was another similar story.
When Somebody Feed Phil went on to season 2 back in 2017, he did this little Instagram promo. And just as a background for you, like I grew up heavy on Raymond. Like Everybody Loves Raymond was my jam.
I could tell from listening to that episode.
Yeah. So you know what's up. He put out this video on Instagram, and he was like, whoever can make the best promo spot for Somebody Feeds Phil, I'm taking you out to dinner in Beverly Hills. So I was like, got this. So I'm a rapper. That's what, that's what I do. Rapper
Yeah,
and
I saw
actor.
some on your Instagram.
Oh, yeah, dope, man. So I did a Somebody Feeds Phil rap, and I won his contest that he was running. So
No way.
yeah, man. So then he hit me
Okay,
up.
so he said during your guys' interview, he referenced the rap.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I didn't know what he was. I didn't understand the backstory there. So you made the rap, sent it to him, and that's his promo.
I made it. I posted it on Instagram and Twitter, and he saw it. He was like, "Oh, this is the best." So he followed me on all the socials and messaged me, and he was like, "Boom, you won, dude. Let me know if you're free next week, and when we're going out to dinner." And I was like, "Damn, I can't believe that's happening." But you know what? I got to tell you, man. So obviously that experience was incredible, right? We go out to dinner at the cheese store in Beverly Hills. It was like, I don't know if you've ever been there, but
I don't think I have.
it's dope. So it's literally what it sounds like. It's a cheese store, but they got this like dope, like VIP status back room that's for people like that. And so we went back there, and like I got there early, and the dude that was there, his name was Norb. He owns the store, and he was like, "Yo, bro, like, I've had experiences back here, like giving food to like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and shit." Like, he was giving me these dope stories. So Phil got there, and we had this dope, like a few course meal. I mean, Somebody Feeds Phil, like, the vibes. And so probably
Was he also making an episode out of it? Or it was just
we were just chilling. And
okay.
And so, we hung out for a couple hours, and we just shooting this shit, really like getting to know each other. He was so warm, so friendly, and just such a beautiful person. And for me, like growing up as a fan and like in Queens, New York, and I just like never thought I'd even make it out to Hollywood, let alone be sitting like eating dinner at a restaurant that I would never thought I would find myself in. Eating with Phil Rosenthal was amazing. But what's more than that is that after that, it's like that for a lot of people doing a little promotion or something, that could have been one and done. It could have been like, all right, cool, we had dinner, like that's it. But he's maintained the relationship. Like we've stayed in touch. We talk, we interact on social. We talk, like, you know what I mean? If I need advice or if stuff's going on or whatever, like we talk. And like, even when I hit him up for the podcast, he was like, yeah, come to my house. Like, let's film. And I was like, wow, dude, like, so nice.
I love that, dude. I feel like that's like such a lesson for everybody who works in this business to just like, I mean, obviously it is, you have an impact with just the work that you're doing and making good work and, making movies that people remember or shows that people laugh at. Obviously that's a very powerful tool, but also to just have those kind of really magical human interactions with people that are new to the business that you've been in for 50 years or look up to you in some way. Like that is just, I think, an equally important role for people to play. And it's just, I love every time I hear stories about people like that doing that, man, because then like 15 years from now, you'll do the same thing for like some
kid that's
brand new to the business and looks up to you and is like, whoa, dude, like Tenn took me to dinner and just like treated me like an equal and like stayed in touch with me. And like, I don't know, dude, that's just, it's huge. It's amazing.
Dude, I agree, man. And I hope that I get in that position one day to be able to do that, man, for sure. Throughout your career, and especially 90s, 2000s, can you remember at least one major project that you auditioned for that you didn't get that was like, damn, I wish I got that?
Dawson's Creek.
Oh, shit.
That one came to me immediately. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to have an answer for this guy. Dawson's Creek.
Was it a starring role?
It was Dawson.
Oh, shit.
Actually, I think I read for both. I want to say my memory on this might be a little foggy. I want to say I originally read for Pacey and then came back. They wanted me to come back as Dawson. I might have that flipped. Usually I always like the like best friend part better.
Yeah.
So I think it was that. And then they're like, no, we don't think he's quite a Pacey. Have him come read for Dawson. And then I remember testing for it. And it was still like I was up against a few other people at that point. I remember doing a chemistry read with Selma Blair. I think I was reading Dawson and she was reading Joey. Her name was Joey. Wasn't Katie Holmes' name on that show Joey?
I think so. I wasn't as well versed in Dawson, but I think so.
Anyway, I remember like she was this like really incredible actor. And I had a similar thing to that story I told about reading with Jennifer Love Hewitt for the first time.
Oh,
And I
wow.
sort of thought like, dude, that felt good. I remember like going over to the side, they paired us up and gave us some time to go over to the side, and we rehearsed together, and then we did it. And I remember thinking like, dude, I feel good about this. Like that went amazing. And then I didn't get it. And I was so bummed because that script at the time, I think that was pretty early Kevin Williamson. It might have even been his first thing. I don't know.
Word.
But, he had such like a distinct voice, and the writing was just the language that those characters spoke in, kind of like before the Gilmore Girls thing. You know how like that show, like it had a very specific voice, and there was like a cadence to it that was just very specific. And I had never read anything like that before, and I just thought it was awesome. I remember thinking to myself, like, this show could like be on for a while, and turns out it
good run. Yeah.
But that was a heartbreaker. That one definitely sticks out to me.
Now that you say it, I could totally see you being Dawson, bro.
Oh, I wanted it so bad. But I mean, that cast, that's another iconic cast. Like they just crushed it and
killed it.
Now it's hard for me to picture anybody else playing those roles.
Yeah. Upside Down Magic, dope film. Did you guys get talked to about sequels yet? Because the book series, they got mad books, so obviously it's open for sequels.
God, I would love to do another one, man. The only problem with doing it, no one has talked to us about it, and it's been a few years now. So the only problem there is like all the kids have really grown. In fact, on the 4th of July, I just ran into this kid, Ellie Samui, who plays Elliot in the movie. I ran into him on the beach, hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and we had this like amazing little reunion. But he's like taller than me now, and he's about to turn 16.
Oh, man.
And, so I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if at this point it works, unless they did like a new group of kids, like a new group of kids comes to the school or something, because the books really do go on and on. But yeah, that was another magical experience. And I think I was saying this earlier, that was kind of when I did that movie, I realized I hadn't really done a kids movie since I was a kid. And it was a really interesting experience for me, because I remember getting that script and reading for it, and I really thought the character was a lot of fun. I loved it. Just like out of the box, like wacky stuff.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
So I loved that character, but I do remember thinking like, this is like a Disney Channel movie. And like, is this really like the direction I want my career to go in now? Like, is this like what I do now? Yeah. And I remember having these like semi-pessimistic thoughts about it. Then I got the job and we shot it in Vancouver. And I remember even when I got there, I just remember having this sort of like mixed feeling about it. I was happy to have a job. I was happy to be playing a character that I thought was going to be really fun. But I was just like, I'm doing a kids movie. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I hadn't done that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a table read one of the first days that we were up there. There's a bunch of that movie that I'm not in, and that the kids are just interacting with each other.
Yeah.
I remember sitting back in my chair at that table read and watching these kids act with each other and watching the director interact with them. And I had this full circle, like flashback moment to when I did House Arrest. And I like specifically remembered my first table read for House Arrest. And I just had this little epiphany of like, oh, wow, it's like full role reversal.
Yeah.
And I'm the grown-up now.
Yeah.
And all these kids that are like, some of them weren't super brand new to the business. Actually, a few of them had worked a bunch, but some of them were brand new. And I just remember like being very inspired by that moment at the table. And from that moment on, I had zero reservations about the thing. And I was just so pumped to be doing a kids movie, and I was like 150% in. It ended up being such a wonderful experience, and I remember being so sad on our last day, and I'd become such buddies with all these kids that were just awesome in the movie and just awesome little humans. And
Yeah.
I just remember thinking back to those moments that I had had with people like Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Pollak and Robert Englund, and it felt really nice to in some way kind of be that for those kids and be like the older figure on set that, you know, has been in this business for many years now. And it just felt really nice. And it just felt like this full circle kind of magical moment. Yeah, it was wild, man. I don't know if you were searching for quite that much information when you asked about.
No, dude, that
magic, but
that is exactly what I was searching for. That's beautiful, man. You know what's so interesting about what you mentioned about your perhaps initial hesitation for being like, how will it affect my career by choosing to do a Disney Channel original movie? I often think about those things too. And mostly because, like, especially how we grew up, I feel like the world, and is in a lot of ways, and was definitely, people think in boxes, and sometimes they put you in a box and now you can't get out of it. But what I think is so dope about now, man, is like, I've noticed that like those fears are, for all intents and purposes, irrational now, because like with the existence of the internet and the way that new generations view things, people do allow you to reinvent yourself like as often as you want to, as long as you're doing it in a genuine way. And they allow you to express multitudes and say like, all right, yeah, you can be in, you know, you can be Keanu Reeves doing the SpongeBob movie and also be John Wick. You know what I mean? And
yeah, it's a really good point. Like there's a little more freedom that exists now with
so
that.
much more, man. Because I remember like mad moments being scared of like, all right, well, I'm aspiration of a serious actor. I'm a rapper. And then I, started doing a lot of content online, and I was getting noticed a lot for like the funny skits I was doing and things like that. I mean, and that was my first time getting exposed to millions of eyes on me. And I was like, man, am I just going to be known as an internet guy and like, I do dumb stuff on the internet, and like, then everything else I do is going to be irrelevant. And, and then people are asking me to do the podcast came from popular demand. And I was like, it sounds really fun, but I want to do it. But like, am I just going to be a podcaster?
Do I want to be a podcast guy? Yeah.
Do I want to be a podcast guy? And but I've been noticing it's like the people that really are like a fan of you, they'll allow you to be who you are, because the reality is we all contain multitudes. We're all a bunch of different interests and stuff.
Nobody's
like that.
One thing.
Yeah, man. And to be honest with you, man, obviously you've been a part of so many dope projects. You have like a stellar career and a stellar resume. And I really do think though that you have yet to play your peak role, man. I think it's so open for you. I think like something is coming up where it's going to be like, oh shit, like this was the role that you were born to do. You know what I mean?
Dude, that's so nice to hear. Thank you. I hope that's true.
It definitely is, man. It definitely is. If you could bring back just one thing from the 90s, what would it be?
Good question. The first thing that popped into my head is not in any way rational. Dude, my first pager was like the jellyfish pager. Do you remember the see-through, like clear?
Yes, pager? I do, man. Yeah.
And I remember that was like my first bit of like kind of grown up technology that felt like, I'm sure it would be like the same as like a 13-year-old kid getting an iPhone now.
Correct.
Like,
correct.
My own thing that I get to communicate with, and it's just mine. Anyway, dude, I remember that jellyfish pager, and I just thought it was the coolest thing on
What
planet.
color did you have? Just straight clear?
Yeah, just the clear all the way through. I think in later years, I branched out and got into like, I had a clear blue, like teal blue one at some point, but I always liked the like translucent ones that you could like see you could see the components inside.
Dude,
like
that clear aesthetic was big in the 90s. We had phones like that, computers like that, Game Boys like that.
Yeah, all the iMacs were like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does not seem practical in any way. Like
right.
I have no use for a pager in my life, but I loved that thing, man.
It's just a vibe, man. It's a vibe. That's all.
Yeah.
Kyle, man, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for all the dope work that you've done, for being a part of all the cool projects that you've been a part of, and for continuing to entertain us, man. It's really been a pleasure getting to know you. And honestly and truly from the bottom of my heart, like you were a really big part of my childhood. Paper Brigade was like a big, when I taped that shit, I used to run it back all the time. My little sister and I, and you're part of a very serious, warm nostalgia that I have. So it's really cool to get to talk to you now, man. So thank you.
Dude, it's been wonderful. Thank you for having me. And I can't wait to follow all your stuff and see what you do with the podcast and your rapping career and everything else you're into. It's so rad that just what you said about like not getting stuck in a box and feeling free to explore all of these other things and find out that you're like good at doing stuff that you didn't even set out to do. It's pretty rad. And I can't wait to keep track of all your progress with it. I hope we cross paths again.
Oh, thanks, man. No doubt. No doubt. And ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm all grown up.
Woo!
I'm all grown up.